You're listening to the Geekscape Network.
Time to fire up the VCR. This one's my favorite. That was gold.
Welcome to Analog Jones and the Temple Film. I'm Steve.
And I'm Matt.
And we're a VHS podcast that looks at the box art, trailers, and behind the scenes. And this week we're moving on with our Rambo franchise. Matt, what do we watch?
First one that starts throwing off our titles. We've got Rambo III. If you're looking for Rambo 1 and 2, you won't find them because those are the First Blood movies. But this is Rambo 3 regardless.
This mission's important, John. I want you to come with me to help me lead the team. What do you say, John?
I put in my time.
What's that mean?
It means my war's over.
He never draws first blood. He only fights back. The first time was for himself. The second time was for his country. This time,
Rambo, something went wrong.
it's for his friend.
Trautman was a good man, and I'm really very sorry.
You're just leaving him?
What do you expect us to do? Send in a Delta team? Create an international incident?
What about me?
By the way you look, I can see you have no experience in war, do you?
Fired a few shots.
That if you're captured, we'll deny any participation or even knowledge of your existence.
Sounds familiar.
Who is this John Rambo?
You'll find out.
I know he's your friend. But you cannot do this. You both will die. For what?
Because you do it for me.
What do you think this man is?
God! Oh, God would have mercy. He wants.
Who are you?
Your worst nightmare.
Stallone. Rambo 3.
I'm sorry I got you into this, John.
No, you're not.
I think it actually just says Rambo 3 in the trailer, which I'm sure confused people. Or maybe it made it more simple for people back in '88.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like they were looking to see a Rambo movie. So Rambo 3 it was. I'm curious. So one of the things for this movie for me was that I had never seen it before we decided to talk about it. So I had never seen 3. And I wonder, and I don't think this is necessarily the case, but I wonder if the weird title thing had something to do with it. You know, maybe I rented First Blood from the video store because I knew of First Blood Part 2. Never really thought to look in the R's for Rambo 3. I don't know. I can't confirm that because this is pre-internet days or whatever, but I'm wondering if I missed this one because of the weird titling.
It's got to do with having First Blood Part 2, and then First Blood Part 3. Just having First Blood in the title is just, it's odd when you get into sequels. If there was just one, it would have been fine.
Right,
But
yeah, like having it be even First Blood Part 2 is kind of funny because it's like it's supposed to be the First Blood.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, by the time you get to 3, it's even more ridiculous. So yeah, base it down to what we're coming to see. We're coming to see Rambo. So Rambo 3.
Yeah, and I think you can even tell from the trailer, but this one's trying, I'm going to say that right there, trying to pull back to more of the deeper, darker themes of the first one, but then in the second half of this movie, completely stopping that. This movie's odd. It is 2 different films.
It is much like the second one going off of the first one and basically turning into a cartoon. This one, yeah, like you said, kind of combine elements of both, but in my brain then that makes this one like a fully fledged cartoon because it just becomes so over the top. And yeah, we may have a little bit of a base of kind of seriousness in the setting, but then it just goes so crazy off the rails that, you know, this feels like what I would imagine, because I still haven't seen it yet, but what I would imagine a full-length episode of the animated series might look like.
Yeah, and this film definitely feels like you can feel conflict in it within itself. Like it doesn't quite want to know. Like we're saying, like the beginning, it feels like one movie, and then it suddenly turns back into a cartoon of the second one. And I see that they replaced the director. Let's see what it says here. Mulchi was replaced by Peter MacDonald, a veteran second unit director. It was MacDonald's first film as a director, but he was very experienced and had directed the second unit action sequences in Rambo First Blood Part 2. So right there, just reading that, because I didn't do a ton of research on this film, because I thought it was my first time seeing it. Turns out I've seen some of it, but this was my first time from beginning to end. I knew that right away just watching the film. I was like, this seems like a bunch of different writers or someone took over the film. I had that, it had the writing on the wall, because when films take such tonal shifts, it's either a director or a writer is doing it on purpose to manipulate the audience, you know, kind of like Tarantino does in some of his films. Think Dusk Till Dawn, even though he wrote that and Robert Rodriguez directed it. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Or it is done because someone is panicked. Like, oh no, what kind of film are we making? And I'm assuming this director came in and goes, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. And then boom, we have a cartoon the second half of the film. Because I could tell right away there's conflict inside of this movie.
Yeah, I didn't deep dive too hard on the research either here, but I did see that several directors kind of came and went, and Peter MacDonald was kind of brought in pretty last minute because several directors had come through, and people that were probably on the Cosmatos level of filmmakers, you know, from the second one. But I would give Peter MacDonald some credit, because he, despite having kind of coming in on a movie that wasn't originally intended to be his, I think visually he's doing some cool stuff here. I think this is one of the best, if not the best looking Rambo thus far.
This one looks so much similar to the second one in a lot of it, which makes sense, because even if he did a third of the film, I can see it. Plus, when you're, you know, directing in desert and caves, there's only so much you can do. There were a few shots in this that I noticed that they went handheld. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
I found that really interesting, especially with the when they were on the cavalry.
You just don't see that a lot in 80s movies.
No, you don't, yeah.
And this is 88, so we're coming later or whatever. But yeah, it didn't... I guess it was a kind of a new take on this type of action movie, to kind of finally pick the camera up off the tripod and move around sort of throughout the war scene, which is something we see all the time now, today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. The only time you saw like handheld was when it was like POV.
Right, which there is none of in this.
No,
so
this was all like, they're like, let's take these fighting scenes, let's have them move, and I'm sure that confused some audience members. Maybe not everyone. I noticed it a few times when Rambo was running around, and I was like, oh, look at this. This is on the ground, gritty, right with him in the action. I clap, you know, a small golf clap to anyone who did that, because that took a lot of courage back then. That just didn't happen. And if it did, I can't remember.
I'm glad you brought up like sort of the effect that this movie might have had on audiences, because going back to like how I had never seen it before, also too, I feel like this one was just, at least in my circles, was not really talked about, period.
No.
Like, so another reason probably why I avoided it, I didn't know if people liked it. I didn't know if people didn't like it. I really just never heard about this one. So I really don't even know how audiences kind of reacted to it, when I was younger.
It's the forgotten Rambo film. It really is. The first one, obviously, with its deep impact of, you know, Vietnam vets coming back and how they were treated and their post-traumatic stress syndrome that they had and everything. And then you get to the second one, which has such a stark difference, but it becomes like the cartoon. And then I feel like this one was kind of just, even though it only came out 3 years past the last one, it feels like a decade passed.
Yeah, it does feel like quite a bit of time has changed things. And then this one being again in like the late 80s, being in 88, does sort of feel like that advertisement for the animated series, the advertisement for the action figures. You know, like that was a thing we saw a lot then. And this one kind of feels like, even though it isn't directly doing it, you know, it's not like here's Rambo in his tank playset or anything like that, but like it does feel like it is sort of like the lunchbox Rambo.
Perfect way to describe it. Yeah, no, it really is. I think this is the one that really, the first one kicked off all of the marketing, the second one kicked off all the marketing. This one capitalized on it and then took it too far. You know, when I was around 6 or 7, it was desaturated. It was everywhere, and that was all the way into the 90s. And I think the Ninja Turtles is what really kicked down the door of the new generation. You know, it's just like Transformers were kind of winding down a little bit. They came back. Rambo was winding down, G.I. Joe, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it obviously super wound down because this was the last Rambo movie we saw for 20 years.
That one 20 years in the future should have been the last Rambo. That's all we'll say about that. We'll wait till number 4.
Yeah, but like, and then I'm just curious too, like, and this is not like something we could have an answer for, but it is like, I think it's funny that Sylvester Stallone kind of stepped away from both Rocky and Rambo for so long, because Rocky 6 didn't end up coming out until 2006, and then Rambo 4 didn't come out until 2008. So he basically took the 90s off of sort of 2 of his most iconic characters.
Well, he was struggling. People didn't want to work with him. They were done with it. They thought he was just 2 different franchises. The last Rambo did really well. This one right here, well, we'll say 3 was the last Rambo of the 80s. And then Rocky 5, they were considered bad films at the time. You know, that's for other people to decide. We'll give our opinions, but, you know, make your own. And it was kind of like, yeah, this guy's an 80s action star. It's time to move on. And he did struggle. Cobra was a success because of him, mostly. Because of his editing and how smart he is. And then finally, he didn't have a hit. Because I think Cliffhanger, didn't that do really poorly? Or am I wrong?
I don't remember. I do remember kind of Cliffhanger was sort of one that was talked about as some kind of embarrassment, whether it was critically or financially. It was just funny because that also has gone on to become like a classic.
Yeah, a cult classic, you know.
Much like way. Rambo 2 or First Blood Part 2, I guess I should say.
Yeah, and I don't think Stallone made his like comeback until Demolition Man, because then you had Judge Dredd, and that kind of actually started another down trend. And then he came back with Copland when everyone was just like, oh, you know, this guy can act.
Yeah, Copland kind of felt more like Rocky 1, you know, where he was, or First Blood even 1, where he's kind of flexing his acting abilities and his storytelling and stuff like that. So yeah, the Oscar caliber Sylvester Stallone kind of came back with Copland. But yeah, we wouldn't have had that without the dips of Judge Dredd and things like that. And I just think it's so interesting that he was able to stay away from both of these iconic characters for so long, 20 years, like didn't touch either of them.
I don't think anyone was going to give him much money to do another one, and maybe he was uninspired. You know, he was burnt out.
Yeah, because he wrote so many of these movies in both those franchises. Like maybe he also too just didn't have any interest in revisiting those stories yet until we get to the 2000s.
Okay, so let's kick off the watching of this. This was released May 25th, 1988, at a budget between $58 million and $63 million, depending where you look. Wikipedia has a different total. Box Office Mojo has a different total. Whatever, it's around there. I'm sure with marketing, it's closer to $80 million. The box office total is actually where it gets really weird, because I have 2 dramatically different totals. I didn't go any further other than 2 references. So if anyone finds anything out there, I'm going to let you know I was pretty lazy on this. I just thought it was kind of crazy. So with this game that we play with Matt, here we go, Matt. The movies that were in the box office at the same time. We had Big with Mr. Tom Hanks, Crocodile Dundee 2, Willow, Bull Durham, Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, Poltergeist 3, and Funny Farm with Chevy Chase.
I mean, I just gotta say, it sounds like 1988 was kind of a fucking dud year. If I do say so myself. It sounds like kind of a dud summer start there.
Well, yeah, because The New Blood is, like, I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about that. It's one of my least favorite. Same thing with Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, you and I can have a battle royale about who wins on all those when we actually do those, I'm sure, in like 2027. That's my prediction.
I mean, the short answer of it is that'll tie to this is I love Takes Manhattan because it's
God
ridiculous.
damn it, of course you will.
but I think that New Blood is the worst in the series. Personally, I think New Blood is just a total snooze, and so many of those movies. I mean, like Bull Durham is good, and one of the other ones I think you said I liked, but like, yeah, man, like
Big, I'm sure.
Oh, Big, yeah, Big. Yeah. I like Big. But the rest of those just sound like, I don't know, like if this is May 1988. This is prime summer season, and that's the best you got.
From what I remember, Poltergeist 3 is a snooze fest. I don't know.
It's okay.
I haven't watched it in years.
I think
10 years.
It's one of those that's like better than people make it out to be, but it's not great.
Yeah. And Funny Farm with Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase can sit on a fucking Christmas tree. I don't care. I think he is one of the most overrated comedians of all time.
I'm not going to disagree with you because I never really followed his career. I wasn't like the biggest Chevy Chase guy. I like the vacation movies. That's about it.
And as a human being, he's the equivalent of a slug.
With all that said,
that's like the most violent I've ever gotten towards an actor, I feel like, in a long time.
Calling him a slug. But like, so we just said all this. This makes me think then that Rambo 3 box office wise stands out among the pack, in that I would think this, but I may be totally wrong. So my guess would be, if your budget is around 80 million, my guess then for box office would also then be 80 million.
Box Office Mojo has the entire year total for Rambo 3 as the 13th in domestic at $53 million.
Okay.
But then that's the gross. Then I click total gross, and I'm like, oh, that's going to throw things off a little bit. And then I see Rambo 3, it's still $53 million. So I was like, why does Wikipedia have it as a box office of 189? Are you telling me that internationally this film made $130 million?
Perhaps. Is Rambo a big overseas? I know Rambo the character is always in foreign lands, but is this a big series like in China and other places? Like, yeah, where is this movie making this money then?
Yeah, the first one was huge. We talked about that in China, but I couldn't find anything on China in the second one. I don't know. Maybe the Asian market really likes this, because so far China and Japan, the big spenders in the Far East, have not been affected in these storylines. So I think that helps, because China and Japan spend the most amount of money when it comes to the box office for these action films.
Yeah, and these anti-Russian movies, which this one very much is because our villains are Russian, were so much bread and butter in the late 80s. We think of the Red Dawns and everything that sort of came after that. Like all the anti-Russian stuff was making money, where this was franchise bait here. So of course the bad guys are Russian here, and then outside of then Russia, this movie's probably going to do really well everywhere else.
Yeah, so when it comes to you guessing, I'm going to give it to you, even though we have no real total. You're either $100 million off or just $30 million off. Either way, the score is now Movies 321, Matt 2, and 1 tie.
I'll take it. I will take it, and that sounds like an accurate record.
Yeah. If the listeners want to actually count that record, you need to go back to episode 2 and then listen all the way up and then tell us if we're correct.
Yes. Do it. Start at episode 2 and work your way up. And then come back to me and tell me what you think of me in general.
All right, let's move on to this VHS cover. If we're walking down the video store here, we've got Stallone, big, muscly, all greased up right on the cover.
That's all you need.
That's right. Literally, it's Stallone, and then underneath him in a black muscle tee is Rambo III, and then there's a helicopter like spying on him right above his right shoulder in the background.
Because we get some fun helicopter play in this movie.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, the other thing to be featured on the cover. It's greased up Rambo, and yeah, we get some fun helicopter V-Tank stuff later.
Yeah, and I don't even see like a Carloco logo or anything on this. So Carloco produced it and TriStar Pictures distributed it. I don't even see them. They don't even... Yeah, there's the TriStar. A little bitty on the right. You see the horse and the triangle. You'd think a distributor or someone like that would really let everyone know, hey, we did this.
Yeah, this is something we talked about heavily, I think, in the last episode. Is just like the way this franchise gets passed around from distributor to distributor. Now, TriStar and Carloco worked on the last one, but like, who put out this VHS? Is it TriStar? Is it Carloco?
Well, I also see someone else that I don't see very often, which is AVIP or AVID. Avid?
So this is already different than HBO Video, which was the last one. Again, just getting passed around this franchise.
Yeah, I feel like this just has someone, that does the North American release, and then the international releases are all over the place.
Yeah, it's crazy. This, just like the titles, the way that this movie, because even from going then from 3 to 4, it's going to be a whole other company again. And I just think it's totally insane that all these VHSs are coming from different distributors, which are different from theatrical releases, and it differs from movie to movie. So I just think it's so interesting that like a lasting money-making franchise that is, like I said, lunchbox level pop culture, studios just like pass this around.
Yeah, even though they make money, I don't understand why.
Yeah. I don't. It goes back to the same thing of like, I don't know why it took 20 years to get another one, and I don't know why a studio didn't want to hang on to this like a golden goose. Like, this is money printing itself here. All you got to do is grease up Stallone like that cover, and it should sell itself.
Yeah, you should never be embarrassed to send these things out if they make money. Who cares?
Yep, exactly.
That's why I never understood why Paramount was so embarrassed about Friday the 13th. It's like, who gives a crap? It's money. Never be embarrassed.
And there's some stuff I'll talk about in the next episode about Lionsgate and what was happening at the time when Rambo came out. So, like, yeah, if it's making you money, who gives a shit?
That's pretty much our motto. If we were in charge of production, it'd be you and I'd be like, I don't care. I'll produce Christian films that teach the worst things ever. If they produce money, I'll just put like a little disclaimer. Stephen Bay doesn't believe in this shit.
but I believe in making money.
Yeah, these people are gonna believe whatever the hell they want, so I'm just gonna whatever. I'll go to hell with that stamp on my forehead. All right, let's read the back here. Got 2 production stills and a title. That's it. Rambo 3 production stills shows all the Afghani rebels on their horses with the mountains in the background. And then we have another production still where Trautman and Rambo are behind a rock, I guess between a rock and a hard place, because I think that's when the Russians are right in front of them.
Yeah, hilarious. Good call there.
Yeah. And then we've got box office sensation Sylvester Stallone is back in the most explosive Rambo adventure to date. Rambo 3 finds John Rambo living a secluded life in a Buddhist monastery in the search of inner peace. When friend and mentor Colonel Sam Trautman visits to ask for his help in a top-secret mission to Afghanistan, Rambo declines to enter another war. Trautman goes Oh, that's not right. It should be Trautman goes in it alone and is almost immediately captured by the enemy. When Rambo learns of his friend's fate, he immediately sets out to return Trautman to safety in a spectacular rescue that only Rambo could pull off. I find that you and I run across so many of these oddly written descriptions.
Yeah, I think it's like around this time period too, like this late 80s, early 90s is like when the video explosion happened. It was like, where the fuck are they getting these copywriters from?
Yeah, because it says Trautman goes it alone. No, and that's why it confused me so much, because I thought I was the idiot, and then I look at it again and I go, no, they're the idiots.
The way you talk, sort of being written on a lot of these things. And it's like, that doesn't translate to, a paragraph on the back of a box. You can't have it sound too conversational. It's got to be a description of the movie, not just like somebody telling you what the movie's about. So yeah, and we keep finding this. We keep finding that like at least these copywriters are just like, this is what I think of it. Here's a half sentence, and yeah, that's what it's about.
Most of these descriptions are like 3 paragraphs at the most. We get a couple books, but mostly they keep them 2 to 3. Does no one edit them?
Yeah, how many proofreads did they go through? Yeah. Because we've seen so many weird sentence structures and things like that. So who knows?
Well, even weirder than that is the runtime. When I see 102 minutes, and I actually caught this when I started watching the film, I was like, whoa, how long? 102 minutes for a Rambo? Like, after the last one, I thought everything would be 90 minutes.
Yeah, this is the longest Rambo in the first 4 here. It's weirdly, like 12 minutes longer kind of than the rest of them. And it was a little surprising, but I guess it's the late 80s too, now it's the epic, I guess the grand finale sort of it was for a while. So maybe that's why it's a little longer than the other ones. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't really. I think this has a lot to do with who was making the final call in these edits, because it wasn't Stallone. There's no way Stallone lets us go 100 minutes.
Yeah, and we know that because by the next one, we're back to 90.
Exactly. So let's get into this VHS. We have no trailers. This really surprises me in 88, coming off this popular of a franchise. You think this VHS would have been rented by everyone, but do you think it has something to do with the distributor maybe not believing in this?
Or just the random tossing around of distributors, is Avid going to put its movies on there? Is it going to put TriStar movies on there? Is it going to put Carloco movies on there? Are there Carloco movies that are owned by somebody else? Yeah, it was. So how's that going to go?
That's a good point. We've never discussed about what someone's allowed to put on a VHS and if there's any fights about it.
Does this get a pass because it's a production company, but it's not the distributor? So yeah, and then also too, 88. Our trailer's as huge yet on VHSs. It's not the mid 90s. It's not like where you're gonna put in a Warner Brothers movie and we'll see 10 trailers before the movie starts.
Well, I always wonder if Warner Brothers kicked off the trailers the most.
They seem to have the most, so I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Yeah. But yeah, no trailers here, and we get started. Now, before we get into the movie, we didn't plan this to kind of come out when this is coming out.
No, we had a discussion on this pre to our recording that we had no idea that this movie taking place in Afghanistan with the rebels and everything was going to be coming out right around September 11th.
Yeah.
We are not trying to be controversial, spark anything like that. We'll take the listens. If anyone listens because of that, sure. But we're two Midwestern idiots who are like, well, look at that. Ain't that interesting?
Truly, it was like, well, what are kind of some action franchises we can cover for the summer and the end of summer and stuff like that? Lethal Weapon and Rambo just kind of came up, and that's what we did. But then, yeah, this one lands kind of coming out right around September 11th, right around our exit from Afghanistan in 2021 here. I don't know when you're listening to this, but if you're listening to it when it's live, whoops, we didn't mean to do that.
Well, at least this film was better than our exit. Oh, not according to the Golden Raspberry Awards. Shit.
Oh lordy, yeah. I mean, this movie. It's funny how we talked about how like the last movie was panned. And, like, yeah, this movie too, more of the same. It is iconic and part of pop culture, but critically not beloved.
No. I only read one critic's review on this, and it was like the third one I clicked. It was in 1988, and it really trashed this film. Like, it was angry this film was made. And it's kind of like, sometimes I'm mad at films too, but it's usually about its content. And I would understand if you're upset about the content of this film, but this critic was mostly mad that a stupid action film like this is being made. And I'm like, oh, you're one of those critics where your ideals are getting in the way of you actually constructively criticizing the film. Because like his first paragraph was mostly about films like this shouldn't be made. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to continue to read this.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like we always deal with it in horror all the time too, where it's like, don't have somebody who doesn't like horror movies review the new horror movies coming out. Like, you don't have to have a super fan doing it, but like somebody who's a neutral party should be your kind of reviewer. If you have a critic that doesn't like action movies, don't send him to go see Rambo 3. He's not gonna like it. He's already got too many preconceived notions going in. That said, I am not the biggest Rambo fan. I like these movies or whatever. This one was my favorite of the original trilogy.
Oh my gosh, we're complete opposite. This was my least favorite. And we'll go into it right now with the feature presentation.
And now, our feature presentation.
So we have a film that's taking place 3 years past the second one, which is funny because this, the second one came out 3 years previous in 85. I believe the first and second one had the same timeline. So all of this is following the same timeline of the 80s.
Yeah, but there's some weird timeline stuff from 1 to 2, though, where it's like, is this set in a different time than when it came out type thing? So it's not perfect. But yes, this one is 3 years apart in story and in release.
But they're doing the same thing with the first to second. Even though you look at the first one, you're like, are you sure we're taking place? You know what I mean? Like, the first one kind of seems like it's taking place in like the book was written in 72, but the film kind of feels like it was taking place in like 76, 77.
Right.
Even though the film came out in 82.
Right.
So there is a little bit of confusion. I don't think we actually talked about it in the second one. But hey, we've got this one to talk about it, so there we go. Timeline seems odd, but everyone with the storyline has been spaced out the exact same amount of years that it came out in theater.
Yes.
Which is interesting. You don't see many. I don't know if I can recall any that do that. Lethal Weapon?
Yeah, they kind of timed that one pretty well. They timed those like release to time that takes place in between the movies or whatever. Yeah, so this one, I love how when you started the description for it and you said like living peacefully, he's living peacefully, but he's still doing like blood sport fights for money.
Yeah, but they're not deadly fights. I mean, I guess they could be, but he refuses to kill someone, and then he goes off and he lives peacefully in this, monastery. I think it's in Thailand.
Yes.
Is that what they said?
Yeah.
My biggest concern with this whole thing is I think Trautman is a real dick in this. And let me play the clip for the viewers out there.
I don't know what you think about this place, but I like it. I like being here. I like working here. I like belonging to something.
You do belong to something, not this. When are you going to come full circle?
What are you talking about?
You said that your war is over. Now, maybe the one out there is, but not the one inside you. I know the reasons you're here, John, but it doesn't work that way. You may try, but you can't get away from what you really are.
And what do you think I am?
A full-blooded combat soldier.
Not anymore. I don't want it.
That's too bad, because you're stuck with it. Let me tell you a story, John. There was a sculptor, and he found this stone, a special stone. He dragged it home, and he worked on it for months, until he finally finished it. When he was ready, he showed it to his friends, and they said he had created a great statue. And the sculptor said he hadn't created anything. The statue was always there. He just cleared away the small pieces. We didn't make you this fighting machine. We just chipped away the rough edges.
So Rambo's like, you know, hey, this isn't my war anymore. I'm at peace. I'm helping these people. I only do the stick fighting to raise money for them. And then Trautman's like, ugh, you got evil inside of you, boy. You know you got a war in you. When are you going to accept who you are? And I'm like, but maybe Rambo is actually a peaceful monk now.
Yeah, it's like something that we touched on in 2. It's like sort of Trautman is this conservative military leader guy, whereas Rambo has always been this kind of neutral party. So here's this kind of conservative military guy being like, let's go to war, let's fight, you know. And Rambo's like, we're not at war right now. I'm just chilling here. I am like, it's not that he is vehemently anti-war. It's not that he is like literally a monk, because he is doing the fighting and stuff like that, but he's a neutral party. And Trautman's like, come on, let's go, brother.
Yeah, he's an instigator.
Yes.
This guy is sitting here. John Rambo is sitting peaceful. He's working on, you know, the Buddhist monastery its roof at one point. You know, he's telling him it's not my war. I want to stay out of it. Just let the dude chill, and you just want to keep using him as a tool. All he is a cog in this damn war wheel, or this damn war machine, and he's tired of being it. But then Kurtwood Smith shows up, and he's just like, can't believe you're... I think Kurtwood Smith says something like, hey, I thought you said this man was a team player. Turns out that he turns him down. Now, listeners, Kurtwood Smith is in this for about 5 minutes, and you've never seen Steve Bay more mad at the end of the film where, like, he went, where the fuck's Kurtwood?
Yeah, I think Kurtwood's in this movie simply because RoboCop came out the year before, and he was probably a hot commodity. And yes, they stick him in here for 5 minutes and literally give him nothing to do.
I honestly thought he was going to be on the sides of either the Russians or the Afghanis at the end. I thought he was going to come in at the end and be like, I brought you reinforcements, damn it. America ain't sitting this one out. Or something like that.
They also set him up where he could be this movie's Charles Napier, you know, being behind the computers or whatever, you know, like the guy, the war machine guy. But yeah, they just like have him kind of come in, also try to recruit Rambo, and then he's on a helicopter and that's it. No more.
That's what I'm saying. You had options and you decided to use none of them. But, you know, that could be because of the turmoil with the shooting, you know, whoever with the director and whoever's, I don't know, I'm sure there are rewrites on this. Usually a film like this does have rewrites. You can't get a name like that and just not use it.
A total loss there. And he kind of is like the exposition guy a little bit, but he doesn't even really fully have that. So, yeah, but I mean, then we kind of get Rambo in action a little bit. We get him out of his peacefulness here. He gets plucked out of because Trautman gets captured.
I gotta mock the stick fighting a little bit. I don't have a problem with any of the choreography or anything like that. It just felt like, well, this feels added at the beginning of the film to get action in because we don't have action for another 40 minutes. And then I read right on Wikipedia, yep, it was completely added at the end. It's like, no kidding. Because they have the stick fighting to set up more action, but the whole point of Rambo is he was supposed to be a Buddhist monk who's like living peacefully, and then you wrecked it with, you know, like the 5-minute intro, which I think is mocked all the time, from Hot Shots Part 2 to, you know, MacGruber. It's mocked all the time, you know, where he's got all the muscles, he pulls his bandana, he turns around, and then he gets into a fight, you know. Okay, but anyway, yeah.
Which is an iconic shot, much like Alien 3, having one of the most iconic shots of the whole series come from the third movie.
It's hilarious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was added at the end, so it wasn't on purpose.
You can't think of Rambo without thinking of him standing up from behind, muscles, tying that bandana. You can't think of this series without that shot, and you get it because of this movie.
Yeah. Trautman gets captured, and then Kurtwood returns back to tell him, he's like, hey, you know, America can't get involved in this because we don't want World War III. So Rambo convinces him to send him on a solo mission to enter Pakistan, get his own weapons, and then go to rescue Trautman on his own in Afghanistan. He agrees to him. We see him meet with an arms dealer. He gets a bunch of weapons. They take him to a rebels camp that is by the closest town that is in Afghanistan. So these rebels want to attack, but they won't. We do get a good speech from the chieftain, and I'll play it right here.
Most of the Afghan people are very strong, and we are determined not to be driven from our land. Our children die of disease, mines, and poison gas, and the women are raped and killed. Last year in the valley of Gabai, the next valley, 6,000 Afghans were killed. Pregnant women were cut with bayonets and their babies thrown into the fires. This is done so they will not have to fight the next generation of Afghans. Yet nobody sees anything or reads anything in the papers. What you see here are the Mujahideen soldiers, holy warriors. To us, this war is a holy war. And there's no true death for the Mujahideen because we have taken our last rites and we consider ourselves dead already. To us, death for our land and God is an honor. So, my friend, what we must do is to stop this killing of our women and children. If getting this man free, so he can return to the free world and tell what happens here is necessary, then of course we will help.
So there you go. I mean, there's the setup of all this, and you get this like really kind of like deep meaning to all this of why these rebels are fighting. You know, so many have died on their side, and you start to think, you're like, okay, this is a different type of Rambo film. I think we're returning to our roots from the first one. Wrong.
Here comes the blood and the bombs.
Yeah, but first they've got to play this dead lamb game.
Yes.
This is bizarre. I'm sure this is a real game there, but when you just look at it from the context of this movie, they were playing in a game before they're about to go on to do this war in the movie. Now, I understand rebels would be playing this game to like kill time, so to speak, but it feels odd in the middle of this movie. But it's just to set up a bunch of helicopters coming and blowing some shit up.
Yeah, it feels like something that, you know, Stallone or a producer or something saw, you know, in a culture, you know, like whether they were over there for like military or whether they were doing research for the movie. I don't know if that was something that happened or whatever, but this feels like something that someone saw and was like, hey, we should put that in the movie because I saw that they do this.
Now, I guess we should explain it. They're on horses, and one team tries to grab the dead lamb, and I'm not kidding. It's just a dead lamb. I think, right? It's a
dead animal. I mean, I don't know.
It's either a goat or a lamb. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the other team tries to knock the horse, you know, the guy riding on the horse, either knock him over or steal it so they can put it in their circle to get their points. That's the game. Pretty simple.
It's soccer with a dead animal on a horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you mentioned too, this is probably about 40-ish
42 minutes.
Into this hour 42 minute movie. So we only have an hour left of this thing. But with this hour with this 42 minutes that goes by, one of the things I do like is, and I cannot think of any for the life of me right now, but there was a good hefty amount of pretty hilarious one-liners that were happening leading up to the action. Again, I can't remember any of them right now, but there was some wonderful machismo one-liners along the way before we get to the bloodshed.
I think they're trying to give him kind of some of the Arnold one-liners.
Yes.
I mean, some of them are okay. I remember them. You know, they just don't have the same charm as Arnold. It's a different character. I think that's the problem. Rambo isn't funny.
Yeah, Rambo doesn't need to have one-liners like that, but that's usually specifically reserved for Trautman in this series, actually. But
yeah, I know. He usually gets the best ones.
So, yeah, we kind of have Rambo doing the silly 80s one-liners, but I just remember kind of sitting on my couch and just being like, just laughing. Like, just being like, oh my God, this is so, like, 80s muscle meathead machismo gotta do this for the greater good kind of hilarity of all these one-liners that Rambo was dropping.
Is this jumping of the shark of 80s superheroes? Is this, or super soldiers? Is this the actual, like, jumping of the shark?
Some critics might say so. Like, and maybe they would say maybe the second one was over this one, or I don't know.
I don't know. 85 seems a tad early. Because we had some pretty good things come out. You know, we had Jean-Claude Van Damme come out with Bloodsport, 87?
Yeah, I think so. So.
I don't know. Let's just put this up as the nominee. We can figure that out when we go through every 80s action film, but this has got to be one. 87 seems like the correct year. 88 seems about the good year to do it, because this is when we had, you know, like the way too many, you know, Friday the 13th 7 comes out in the same year. That's when it's just like, okay, guys, I think you're running out of things to say. We're now putting a psychic in it to fight Jason.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a reason that, like, the Hot Shots Part 2 kind of looked at this one, and MacGruber and stuff like that, like you mentioned, like, I think there's a reason that this is kind of that spoofed movie in that benchmark. And it's probably because, like you said, this is the one that kind of kicked off that stupid machismo meathead action genre that lasted into direct to video in the mid 90s.
Yeah, I think a lot of the mid 90s ones were looking back at this. They're like, we need a Rambo 3 type character. It's like, are you sure? Because that one was kind of made fun of. Shut up. That's all we could afford.
and the deadly praise and things were born.
Exactly. But that's an amazing movie. Relative to what we're talking about.
Yeah. Amazing to watch. Yeah.
All right, so we have the helicopters attack them while they're playing the dead goat lamb animal game. Rambo destroys one of them with a turret, which I always remember from the trailer when he blows it up. But there's actually another helicopter blow up that's even more memorable, and we'll get to that. So basically this kicks off, like, Rambo's like, okay, I've had enough. I'm going to go through all these caves with this kid and this guy who supplied the guns. They're going to get me to this camp. We're going to break in and go through security, set up some bombs, and try to get Trautman out. Now, it wasn't fully successful, but he penetrated the defense, and then he escaped in like a sewer, and then we get him and his friend down there. And I mentioned this, that they had to escape into like a sewer and everything, because Rambo literally lights himself on fire to cure himself.
And actually a really good effect too, by the way.
I know. Like I don't know how they did that.
It looks real. It looks like he really has a hole in his side that he is blowing shut with gunpowder. Incredible effect. When I was watching this movie, though, I couldn't help but, like I said, this one I hadn't seen before. This section, and I know he does it in all of them, but this section really reminded me of the last one. Last Blood, which we won't really talk too much about with this podcast because it sucked. But
we'll basically review Last Blood for 5 minutes, and it will be just both of us bitching for 2.5.
Right, exactly. But
that's all I'm saying.
The last bit of Last Blood is Rambo setting up Home Alone traps in an underground cave, and kind of similar to what's happening in this one. Like I said, he kind of does shit like this in all of them. But for whatever reason, when I was watching this one, it really did remind me of Last Blood, which I had seen before this one. And I was just like, oh, that's funny. Like it's a Rambo 3 connection.
Yeah, First Blood used it the most when he was setting up the traps to get all the sheriffs and deputies and everything at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, it goes into it a little bit more. I could see that. And then it's kind of like every odd film, they use a lot of Home Alone traps.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I just like really got that like Last Blood vibes here, but like this movie a lot more.
I'll watch this movie. I think this movie's half of it's boring as shit, and I'll watch this movie any day from Last Blood.
Oh yeah, because that one, it's terrible. But you get this great scene with the self-surgery, which was so like great effects. It felt painful. I like that. I really like that part a lot, actually.
I would love to get a real doctor in here to say like what would happen after you do that, because I imagine you would just be riddled with infection.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a doctor would be like, don't put gunpowder in the hole in your side.
We've all seen it in movies where they like cure a wound with fire. They like, burn it shut. This one is just wasn't it a bullet wound right through him? Or was it shrapnel?
It was either like a bullet wound or like an arrow or something like that. Like something went through him. And then because he's got it front to back on his side. And yeah, he basically like has to fill the hole.
Well, he did. I don't know how they did that effect, and it is incredible. So they should be given credit for that. But we move on to where he tells the gunman and the kid to, leave. I can do this on my own. And then he returns and rescues Trautman before he is killed with a flamethrower. Which is crazy enough. But in this film, that's tame.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody being killed by a flamethrower is nothing by the time you get to the end of this movie.
Because they literally walk out of the whole complex here and then steal a gunship with a bunch of soldiers on it that I guess wait, who are these people that they have on the gunship?
Are these the rebels that are working with Rambo here?
I don't know, but they've got other people. Someone's shot and they fall out of it. The helicopter wrecks immediately because it was hit or whatever with some gunfire. But what I love is right before they fly it, Trautman looks at Rambo and goes, "Can you fly that?" And he goes, "We're about to find out." And I'm like, wow, what a risk.
Yeah, it's a classic Rambo cartoon shit, right? Of course he can fly a helicopter that he's never flown before.
Fuck it, why not? I mean, he figured out how to fly the first helicopter and the second one, and we have no idea if he actually has any skills in flying a helicopter. Who cares? It's Rambo.
He can do it all. He's a one-man army.
Yeah. And then they escape. He blows up a helicopter with an explosive tip arrow, which makes its return from the second one.
Very exciting for me. Big fan of the exploding arrows, and was very happy to see it used on some heavy machinery in this one.
Now, I may have made this up in my head, but I'm pretty sure they cut to the guy's face with surprise right before he blows up in the helicopter.
Of course they do. It's an 80s action movie. Of course you have to get the bad guy going, "Whoa."
That's straight out of a Cannon film, because I just recently watched Death Wish 3 and they do that, where it's just a classic trope that you have to have in an 80s action film, where the bad guy has to have the dumbass look oh. I love it. Don't ever get rid of it, folks. Put it in the 2000s, the 3000s, keep it forever.
I am certain that second unit's job in these action 80s movies is shooting action scenes and reactions before they blow up. That is the second unit director and second unit department's job solely on these movies. It's all right, and you're about to get hit with an exploding arrow, and go. Whoa.
Also, I should let you know that I've been reported to get 20 of these reaction shots, so be creative. Well, I'll use these last 10 one. They'll never use them, and then they end up using them in the shot. Whatever shot you think they won't use, they will.
They will, yeah. Whatever one you're that wasn't my best, that's the one that's going to be in the movie.
And then Trautman and Rambo escape into a cave. They go crazy, killing some dudes with some... I see Rambo running around, sniping people with arrows, and Trautman shooting some people. Then he ends up taking out the second in command, I guess you would say. Basically the big muscle head.
Yeah, the classic 80s trope of the second in command guy who is the big kind of threat, and then is the brawn, and then the brains is our big bad at the end. But we always have the second in command thing in these late 80s movies. It's such a thing. And yeah, they have the big battle in the caves with him.
Everyone's doing the Indiana Jones.
Yes, this is such a trope in these movies.
I know. I don't know if Spielberg stole this from the 50s or whatever, that he got it from the serial comics. I don't really care, because it came back so well in the 80s that people use it over and over. And if you were that good with something, I mean, hell, when someone steals from you, that's like a badge of honor.
Exactly. So if that becomes a genre trope and you get to own that, that's awesome.
Yeah, good for you. Obviously, Spielberg has enough things that have been stolen from him, all from his shots alone, from his storytelling. And he's just racking up the trophies.
Yeah, and that's okay by me. And I'm sure that's okay by a lot of fans.
It's like, if it works, it works.
Exactly. I love to see it. So
what is crazy about this is when they get out of the cave and they're trying to run away, they're trying to get to the border, get into Pakistan to escape. You know, then they get cornered by the Russian army, who's just got like a big old helicopter with a bunch of guns, some tanks, a bunch of trucks, and a lot of guys with guns. And Rambo and Trautman are looking straight at him behind a rock, and they're like, "Do we give up?" He's like, "Nah." He fires a rocket at like I think a fuel tanker truck or whatever, blows it up, jumps into a crack above, and then the rebel army from Pakistan is attacking. They go across the border. It gives Rambo enough time to get into a tank. And this right here, this 5-minute sequence at the end is absurd.
It's a tank v helicopter. How could you not? What's not to love here?
This is what surprised me, is how they decide to the writers get together, whoever's putting this together, they're like, well, how's he going to take down this helicopter in a tank? Most of us would assume he's going to shoot the helicopter down with the tank, the big rocket, whatever the tank shoots. No. Somehow, the guy in the helicopter decides, going straight on to ram the tank is the best way to take it out.
Yes.
So Rambo defeats a helicopter in a tank by ramming into it on the ground level.
Yes. Which has a reaction shot from the bad guy before he blows up.
You know, there were people in the second unit and everyone who was sitting there looking at the script. And they're like, really? The helicopter's going to just run right into the tank? That's how it's going to happen? Okay, let's shoot it.
There was probably so much coke and steroids on that set that they were probably just like, yeah, fuck it, let's go. Let's do it. Let's go right now.
Makes sense to me. The only way you can defeat Rambo is if you sacrifice yourself. Okay, let's go.
Let's blow some shit up.
So as Trautman and Rambo walk off in victory, what's the message that we get?
Dedicated to the people of Afghanistan.
Wow. Is there any action film from the 80s, or maybe any action film ever, that has aged more poorly than Rambo 3?
This one sticks out like a sore thumb. Yeah, absolutely. It is. It doesn't hit the same in 2021, as the kids say. And it was so funny sort of watching it. But then it ends with the best song in the series, I think, over the credits here. Yeah, we get this end song after it's dedicated to the people of Afghanistan. Again, not hitting as well as we would like in 2021, but we get this amazing cover of the Hollies song. I believe it was the Hollies that did it first, or at least the biggest version of it. That Bill Medley does of "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother," and it is so good at the end of this movie. It's so cheesy. It's so 80s. It's not Frank Stallone, but it'll do.
Well, I was gonna say only one man could have sang this better, and that's Frank Stallone. Yeah, I listened to the whole song too. But it was the middle of the night. It was like 11:30 on a Friday night. I'm like, what else am I doing?
Exactly. You watch those whole end credits for sure. Yeah, it's so good. But yeah, it's weird. It's different, and it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb, being kind of like a pro-Afghanistan movie before kind of everything changed.
Yeah, so let's go on to the museum.
This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you.
That belongs in a museum.
So do you.
This is the part of the show where we go out in the film jungle like Indy and bring something back. I have like 3 things I can put in this. So I don't know how many you have.
I have 2 I could use that I like, so.
All right, I'm just going to go with the shot of the exploding arrow into the helicopter with the expression of, "What?" Because I think that just defines how ridiculous this entire film is.
Yeah, and I mean that's why I love this movie. I mean the one-liners and the machismo and stuff in the first 40 minutes are delicious, but the absolutely ridiculous, cartoonish, over-the-top violence, just like the comical 80s violence that the last hour of this movie has, is just, it's so fun to me, and that's a perfect definer of it. One of the things that I'm not going to put in the museum, but I almost considered putting in the museum, was the end with the tank v helicopter, again with the expression of the bad guy before he blows up. So I think that's a very worthy choice to put in.
Both of them are basically the same in a way. I don't know actually which one's more ridiculous. A guy hiding behind a rock and mind you that this helicopter has missiles. It could have just been firing, to destroy the rock so they could then see Rambo, because they know he's behind the rock. There's nowhere else for him to hide.
But one little arrow
hits him with an explosive arrow. Boom. Then again, I don't know. You're in a helicopter. You could stay way far in the air where the tank couldn't get you, and you could just fire missiles at it. But I went with the first one. It just had more of an impact on me.
Yeah, they're both fantastic. My museum contribution has got to be the self-surgery scene, because it looks amazing, it looks real, and it's over the top fucking ridiculous. I don't think it's a good idea to pour gunpowder in an open wound ever. So, but I'm glad they did it here for my entertainment.
Yeah, it's that scene is just one of those where I looked at it and I go, seriously? You couldn't just burn both sides? You had to go
Movie
through.
logic.
No. Well, I think this is also one of the franchises that made fun of that, even Last Action Hero started to make fun of, where you could never hurt the hero. It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah. Rambo here is virtually indestructible. He cannot be taken down. He is, if you think about it, it's fitting for the character that he is a one-man army or whatever, but truly he is one dude, just some meathead, roided out dude who is fighting against an entire army and tanks and helicopters. It's not based in reality.
It's not even close to based in reality. Terminator 2 is more based in reality.
Yeah, exactly, because the computers are taking over, but there's no way that one old Italian dude is going to be taking on the entire Afghan army and Russian army.
I don't care how many push-ups you can do. You're just not going to take on a whole army.
But God bless Rambo for doing it for me in the 80s here, because I had a blast at this movie.
Yeah, I'm going to be the downer with this, where I'm in a recommend, I think this is only for completists. Again, like I said with the Lethal Weapon, I think, stick with 1 and 2. But to anyone who watches this, talking out there to the completists, I can tell you the last 20 minutes of this film, or maybe even 30 minutes, are a fucking blast. The problem is the first 70. Ugh. I mean, even the stick fight was just kind of it's a little appetizer. But your main course still isn't for another 60 minutes. I'm starving here.
I was fine with it. I usually kind of have problems with pacing all the time, but for whatever reason, this one just had me have a big goofy smile on my face from start to finish.
You just couldn't get enough of those rebels.
Couldn't do it. Couldn't get enough of Rambo in his greased up body.
All right, that'll end it this week. Come back next week when we take on the last Rambo, because we only pretend that 4 came out.
Yes, it's the full circle final chapter for sure.
Exactly. So remember to be kind.
And rewind.